Hello, everybody. I am John George, one of the founders of VQ Games. I'm at the Esports Plug on Twitter, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about VQ Games' second game, Battle for New Venice. I'm going to run you through just the concept a little bit, what you mint, and how to play the game, just to give people a little overview of what to expect from Battle for New Venice. So we're on the website, vastquestions.com, and this game focuses around 8 criminal factions that are trying to take control of the city of New Venice. That's what you'll be trying to do in the game if you play. Work with your faction to try to destroy the opposition and win the prizes that come with taking over New Venice. If we look around the website, you'll get a quick look at what the NFTs look like, and you'll get a link to check out all the different factions. So if you want to read up on who everybody is and how they work, you can click one of these. You'll get taken to the Trasley campaign page, where you can read a little bit about the Trasley campaign and look at all of their faction leaders. If you click a faction leader, it takes just a second, but you'll get a pop-up that will show you what their NFT looks like, including a little quote from them. You might notice that some of the factions look a little different than others. For instance, if we look at the Trasley campaign here, and then we switch over to, say, the Gravely family, and click one of them, the art style is a little bit different, the coloration is different, and that comes from the fact that we use 16 different one-of-one artists to create all of these characters. So each faction has its own artist, which made all the factions have a very unique and interesting feel to them. So now you're here, you look around, you see the factions, it looks pretty cool to you, you're thinking about minting. What are you going to do? All you do is just go over to mint. It's vastquestions.com/mint. As with any other project, you just pop in, you mint one. When you mint, you will get a character from the city. So in this case, let's say we minted this guy. He's a faction member from the Forgotten Sect. So now we can go back and look at the website and look at the Forgotten Sect. We can read up about them if we want. We can look at their leaders. All the leaders on the website are mintable in the collection. They act as kind of the rare pieces of the collection. Where something like our faction member here, he's a little bit more common. There's no difference in how a faction leader or a faction member plays the game. They all play the same way. The main difference between the two is that faction leaders draw from a separate prize pool that is split a smaller number of ways. So you have the potential to win more money if you have a faction leader. Also, faction leaders, especially if their faction wins the game, are much more likely to end up continuing in the storyline than specific faction members or citizens. But in terms of how they play the game, no different. If you look at this section, you'll get a look at all the different factions, all their leaders, including a point at the bottom for our special characters. The special characters are unique pieces that are not aligned with a faction. They play the game in a completely unique way, and they take their turns differently from anyone else. The video that we're about to do here of how you play the game and how it works will only apply if you mint a faction member or faction leader of some kind. The very few people who mint special characters, they will have to come talk to us to figure out how their character works and what it's trying to achieve, as they have goals that no one else in the game knows except for them. So now that we have our faction member, we just want to see how the game gets played. So I'm on a different account here, so we have different assets, but all you do is go to the website, click connect, and it will show all of your faction members, citizens, and faction leaders right here on this page. When you see all of them, you can go down here and click this vote button, and 2 drop-down menus will show up, one for attack and one for defending. You decide who you'd like to attack. Let's say the Inciscos, you'd like to defend against 420. You click submit, and it will lock that in. Now you can change that at any time by going back to the website, clicking vote again, and just changing who you want to attack and defend against. When you've decided that these are your final actions for the turn, you can just leave it right here. Each turn lasts 3 or 4 days, so you can just leave them sitting until the end of the turn when all the information is sent to us. When the information gets sent to us, we use a combination of our in-house algorithm and Chainlink VRF to randomly dole out the results of the turn. So each turn, based on how many attacks each faction was putting towards each other and how many people from each faction were defending against other factions, there will be deaths all throughout the city in each faction. We do that all provably randomly on chain to make sure that everyone knows that their votes were counted and that all the actions are truly random. At the end of each turn, you're going to see us put out a bunch of different ways for you to keep track of how the game is going. Things like the faction stats page right here that will show you each faction's remaining citizens, faction members, leaders, and it will give you the information as to how many faction members that particular faction needs alive to continue. If the collection mints out, that will be the same for every faction. But if it's not completely minted out, there could be slightly lopsided factions that are slightly larger or smaller than others. That is all balanced in the creation of the game, so it doesn't matter either way. You'll also see things like the progress chart. This just shows how each team is doing. These were taken from our test game. Before we went to the main mint, we needed to test the apparatus that we had, including all of our Chainlink VRF stuff and the things on the website, so we ran a small test game using some players from the Discord. These are the faction stats and progress chart pages that we used for that. And then you'll get in-narrative updates as well, things like the New Venice Times. A little newspaper that will talk about what happened last turn, but in narrative form, talking about what's going on around the city. The entire VQ narrative universe is built out from our first game that started last year. We continue telling the same story with each new game, and as the story expands, we also continue to add in more players as characters. So if you look through this list of faction leaders, mixed into here, there are some players from the first game who have become characters in the second game. They got either homage characters or something to reference them, something that they wanted to include in the game. And the same thing will happen here. If you play Battle for New Venice, when our third game comes out later this year, you have a chance to become a character that becomes involved in the universe as the story continues. In the first game, characters that survived and continued on to this game will show up. There's a couple in the special characters in particular who were main players in the first game. Now they're coming back in the second game. All of our games are completely different in terms of how they work. Our first game didn't have factions. It wasn't about taking over a city, but it existed in the same narrative universe as this game. So we continue telling this story over time with new characters coming in and new players becoming characters to continue to tell this story of the VQ universe. We also have things that aid us in doing that, like our short stories. Our first short story came out a week or two ago, A Moment in Time, a short story written from the point of view of Killebrew from the 420 faction, and that's just another way to increase the amount of lore and narrative that we have within our project. Some other things to include: if you go into the Discord, there's a leader backstories channel. Whenever a new faction leader is minted, we post a short snippet about their personality, their motivations, their histories. And that is something that we have in spades on the project side. There's hundreds of pages of lore and narrative behind the characters, the factions, the city, and even the world that VQ Games exists in. So that's what we're here to do. Play a fun little game where you have the ability to win 80 plus Ethereum, some life-changing money, and we get to continue building out this story. Every time that we create a game, we essentially write 10 pages of a story and then let you guys play the game to figure out how that story ends. We use the how that story ends that you guys have created to create the next game and continue moving forward with the universe and introducing new players and characters to keep everybody excited. So that is Battle for New Venice. It's a very easy game to play, and it's minting right now at vastquestions.com/mint for 0.03 Ethereum each. We have about 2,500 mints so far. We're really hoping to mint this one out because there's so many awesome characters that have all this lore and backstory with insane one-of-one art done by our crew of amazing artists, and we'd love to see them all get into the game before we start. But that is what we're doing right now. Thanks for watching the quick hitter video, and I hope to see you on the streets of New Venice.